Sometimes being a parent is making those hard decisions, and sometimes it's loving someone so much that you're not going to put them through that.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, candid conversations with interesting people. Rachael Casella met her husband Jonny when she was training to be a police officer. Jonny was one of her instructors. Nothing happened until Rach finished her training, it must be said, but then it was on. The pair fell in love, got married, and as they went on their honeymoon, they started trying for a baby. But like so many things in life, things didn't go according to plan. It's at this point that I should tell you that Rachael and Johnny's story of becoming parents is, well, it's nothing short of heartbreaking, because when they did finally fall pregnant and Rachael gave birth after 40 hours of labour and an emergency C-section to a beautiful little girl called Mackenzie, they'd only have her in their lives for 7 short months. At first, Jonny and Rach were besotted with their baby girl, and why wouldn't they be? To them and the doctors, she was just perfect. But it was after her 10-week checkup that they realised Mackenzie wasn't meeting any of her milestones. In fact, she wasn't moving around like most babies her age at all. And that was when Rachael realised that her perfect little girl needed help. August is Spinal Muscular Atrophy month, which is why we really wanted to share this story with you today. We need to educate new parents about this fatal disease, and we really wanted to help spread the word about a condition that most people have never even heard of. Rachael certainly hadn't. I hadn't before I read about her story. And it's something that awareness is just so important in terms of catching it early and identifying it, because there are treatments that are available. It can't cure SMA, but it can help prevent the onset of and progression of the symptoms. At the end of the podcast, we'll give you a couple of websites where you can find out more information. But now I want you to hear Rachael's story. Rach, you'd had your 10-week check with Mackenzie, but when did you realise that something wasn't quite right with her?
She had started to be like a little bit fussy on the breast and was crying at the end of each feed. So I just thought, oh, I'll just pop down to the local hospital to one of their lactation classes. And I went there just sort of, can they have a look at my technique? Is she going? She was definitely putting on weight. She was a massive chubster. But I just wanted to make sure she was happy. And then when I was there, the lactation consultant said, oh, she's feeding really, really well, but she's not moving the way that she should. And that just completely, like, I don't know, I was shaking my head. That just kind of floored me. I was like, well, what do you mean? And she pointed to my little baby and she asked how old Mackenzie was. And I said 10 weeks. And she said, that little boy over there is 10 weeks as well. And that's what she should be doing. And he was laying down on his tummy, and he was, you know how they kind of put themselves up on their elbows, and I had never seen Kenzie do that. I kind of just like panicked, and I bundled her up, and I didn't even say anything to the lady. I just kind of like, it was like she had offended my child.
What did she say you should do?
She just said, go see a doctor, and I said okay, and I just sort of didn't respond. I just sort of.
Did she seem alarmed?
She seemed concerned. I just walked back to the car, calling Jonny. I was quite, I guess, bordering on hysterical. What do I do? And Jonny was very much like, you know, hey, he's very calming influence. So he was like, let's just, you know, one step at a time. Let's go make a doctor's appointment. And I we just moved house, so I didn't know the area. I just went to sort of a local GP, and I just sat there and I just sit there for like 40 minutes waiting for an appointment, just sort of everything going through my mind. And then in the doctor's appointment, she was pretty quick to sort of say, you need to see a paediatrician, and that just did not alleviate any fears or feelings that I had. It just heightened everything.
You went to see the paediatrician. Your life's really divided into 2, isn't it? Well, 3, I guess. There's before you had Mackenzie.
Yeah.
There's after you had Mackenzie, and there's after that paediatrician's appointment. How did it play out?
We went to the paediatrician, and I just remember my hands were sweaty. I felt like I was going to faint and throw up at the same time, but I'm looking at this little girl who is sort of smiling and cooing at me, and I just like...
Had you noticed her moving? Like, did she move?
She did move, but it wasn't like a normal baby, and we just weren't aware of it, and then all of a sudden it was all we could see. And so in the 2 days that it took to get a paediatrician appointment, I was doing tummy time, and Jonny and I had convinced ourselves that, you know, just in the day that we had been doing it, she was getting better. So we just needed to put in some more effort, and every single movement she made, we were analysing, and we were looking back on the videos when she was first born and seeing, is it different, which it was, because she moved a lot when she was born. And so that's why I suppose none of us really saw what was happening. But then we walked into the paediatrician's office and he asked us a few questions, and then he asked me to undress Mackenzie. So he did some checks like startle reflex and just responses, and it felt like within 3 or 4 minutes of walking into his office he said, I think she's got spinal muscular atrophy.
And you thought,
what is that? What is that? And the second thought that I had was, how can my baby have something that's got a name? I know that sounds really weird, but she's actually being diagnosed with something.
some people talk about relief when they get a diagnosis, but you had gone from not thinking there was anything wrong to this diagnosis in such a short period of time. I imagine there was no relief.
No, and since I've spoken to I have a lot of people who reach out to me, and I've had people who are in that no man's land, and I do understand that sense of relief, but that's certainly not what we felt.
Do you remember what you asked next?
I think Jonny said, okay, what's the cure? What do we do? And he very bluntly said, there's no cure, it's terminal.
Looking back on that appointment with what you know now, is there a different way that it could have and maybe should have unfolded in the way that he told you?
For me, it was difficult, not so much necessarily how he told us, but then after that, when I started asking questions and getting obviously flustered because I've just been told that my daughter's going to die, he said, calm down, Missy.
Oh, he did not.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know how to comprehend the words that you've just told me.
I'm so shocked.
Yeah.
What did you do then?
Jonny and I kind of split in terms of our roles. We stood in the office, and she was still on the table that she'd been examined, just in her nappy, and she's just looking at me. She just has absolutely no idea about the heart that just got shattered. She just needed me, and all I wanted to do was pick her up, but I felt like I was going to faint and throw up at the same time, so I was worried if I picked her up, I'd faint and she'd get hurt. So I just leant over the table holding her hands and just saying no, over and over. Jonny went into work mode, just trying to find not just answers but loopholes. And that's when the paediatrician said that he had heard of a new treatment that was out that was a miracle and that could potentially cure her.
Did either of you ask about prognosis and timelines?
He said definitely terminal. I don't think he told us timelines. I think we found that out the next day when we spoke to the neurologist. Yeah.
So you leave the hell that is that office in pieces, but with this gorgeous, gurgly, smiley baby. I've seen video of Kenzie, and she's so happy and engaged and alert because there's no mental effects of SMA, is there?
No. In fact, they say that SMA babies are usually actually smarter because they're not, using some of their brain and their abilities to learn to physically exist in this world. So,
How do you grieve for a baby that's still alive?
I have no idea.
Well, you did it. You had to go home and
I suppose it got broken up into days. First, we had to sort of go through the hurdle of speaking to the neurologist and actually finding out about this drug. We had a lot of really hard decisions to make.
You chose in the end not to go ahead with that drug. Can you explain that decision?
Yeah, I find it sometimes really hard to explain the decision, to fully be honest about our reasonings without putting down the people who have chosen. And
this is a safe space. You can just talk about your reasons being your reasons.
So the drug is called Spinraza or nusinersen. So at the time it was a drug that was not covered by the PBS, and it was I think about $250,000 US an injection, and you needed 4 injections a year for the rest of your life. So it's not actually possible.
So no one can afford it?
No, not at that time. So we were told that we could be part of a clinical trial. In that clinical trial, we obviously didn't know what the drug would do. We were told that it is 100% by no means a cure. What it would do is prolong life and slow down. So SMA is a motor neuron disease, and basically it means that a person, it's like the childhood version of motor neuron, so the ice bucket challenge, ALS. So she would lose the ability to move. It would be her arms and legs first, then it would be her organs.
This is if left untreated.
Yeah, and she'd sort of struggle to swallow, and then eventually she wouldn't be able to breathe. So basically the cruelest way that you could possibly imagine a child to go.
And no one could tell you whether this would happen over a space of months or years or decades.
So we were told that the average life span of a baby with SMA type 1, which is what Kenzie had, was 8 months. So we were also told, though, that it could be that she would develop a cold and she just wouldn't be able to handle. We could be in and out of hospital for months on end as she tried to fight, or we could wake up one morning and she could have just passed away overnight suddenly with so every morning we woke up, we looked in her bassinet to check that she was still with us. So this drug we were offered as part of a clinical trial, so it would be free, but it was not a cure. It would mean that once you lose a motor function, you cannot get it back. So anything she had already lost, she wouldn't be able to get back. And Kenzie was actually quite advanced when she was diagnosed.
So cruelly, the disease had started activating soon after she was born, at a time when you couldn't have been expected to notice, because it's not like she was walking and then she couldn't.
No.
But it can come on at any stage, can't it?
Yeah,
almost like a sleeper.
It's a slow. Type 1, which is what she had, it's the most common. They can normally move at birth for the first couple of months, and then it just starts to deteriorate. So she had already lost quite a lot of motor function. So she was never this drug was not going to give it back to her. It would just stop her, or it would delay the progression of it. And that decision, in some ways hardest decision we've had to make, in some ways easiest decision we've had to make.
Tell me about that.
We knew that some children had been given it and they had no response. We knew of some children who had been given it and it had helped them a little bit, but then they'd become frozen in that time and they'd had to be taken off of it, which meant that they had actually delayed and expanded the time that it took to pass away. So, but we also know of there's 2 really good cases in Australia that has actually helped them quite a lot. They'll never walk, they're in wheelchairs, they will probably eventually pass away, which is horrible, and they will potentially go in and out of hospital, as we've seen. So, how do you make that decision? And we honestly don't think that there is a right or wrong decision to it, which is why we try really hard to protect the decisions of other parents around it. But for us, we said no. The combination of we didn't know whether it was going to go on the PBS, and if it didn't, would we have given her a year's worth of this treatment got her to a place where she could maybe swallow, and then we'd have to take her off of it. What would be the effects? There's also a lot of side effects to the medication. So we personally said no, that we were going to let her live the life the best life that we could away from hospitals, obviously doing whatever we could to make sure she had a comfortable life and do her appointments and everything. But we wanted to live with her, and for us the main thing was that she would have no consciousness of what was happening. Like, she would only know happiness and love, so she would never get to the age where she would know that she was different. She would never wonder why she couldn't move. And for us, we felt like the drug was a little bit of a drug for the parents to get more time, and for us, I would have moved heaven and earth to have more time with her, but not at the expense of her happiness.
For you and Johnny, it came down to quality of life over quantity of life.
Yeah.
What a shitty choice to have to make.
There was, one of many shitty choices when you're then told to do an end of care plan, a resuscitation or no resuscitation plan. I can't even comprehend some of the decisions that we've had to make.
When did the idea of a baby bucket list come about?
I think it was just kind of seeing some of the other children, like there was some of the other families that had sort of actual bucket lists, like have their child arrested by police and, just those sorts of little things that people would have over their lifetime. For us, we...
You mean they tried to cram... I was like, wait, how is that being on your bucket list? But you kind of mean all the things that they would miss out on because they would not grow old, getting married, getting arrested.
Yeah, so
I didn't think of that as being something on a bucket list.
Yeah, well, you see some of the old, these stories of grandmas sitting in their retirement homes and they're asking to have the handcuffs on and be arrested. I guess it's a bucket list.
That's so interesting.
It's not for me. But
not for the daughter of 2 police officers. Yeah. I don't think it is a bucket list item. Although you could have made that one come true really easily.
We could have. For us, it was life and travel. So we both really love travel. So we paid for an emergency passport. Got the cutest photo of her in the world. I spent hours trying to find a place that we could take her that would have a good healthcare system if something happened. And then I realised that we couldn't take her overseas because we couldn't get travel insurance for a terminally ill baby. I must mention that when you ask how do you grieve, when I say it was in stages, I shut down. I just wanted to hold her. I sat on the couch with her for a couple of days and just I didn't eat, didn't drink. Johnny went into, he needed to look after me and look after Kenzie, and the things that he needed to do was to call the families and to, he just talked. He needed to talk it out, so he just paced back and forth while I just shut down. And then about, I think maybe 2 days later, we were standing in the living room and I think one of our parents who had come up had Kenzie in another room, and Jonny he just looked at me and he said, we have to do this together because this is either going to make us or break us, and we have to, she doesn't know any different. So we made an agreement that we would, whenever we needed to remember our strength, that we would look at each other and just say the word together, and that we would never cry in front of her. So they were the decisions that we had made because she was so, as you said, she was so switched on, and she would only know the emotions and the feelings that we were putting out there. So we made that decision, and then that's when we went, okay, well, we know that we've got this time with her, let's make it count. And that's when we rushed out to get the passport, realised we couldn't travel with her, but then thought, well, let's show her her own country. So we kind of just went into this process where I think it was sort of like a 3-week sort of blocks of time where we would go and we would do her appointments at the hospital, and we would check that she was doing okay and that she wasn't deteriorating, and we'd do hydrotherapy sessions with her. But we'd try really hard not to be near the hospital. It was just, unless we needed to for her, because it was just seeing children and seeing that pain, and it was more than we could. So we'd go to the hospital, we'd go through those processes, and then if she was okay, we would book our next trip, and we just...
What are some of the things that you did with Kenzie?
Oh my gosh, best memories. Well, the very first holiday we took, because we didn't know how long we had her for. So every single holiday we were like, is this going to be the last one? So the first one we actually had the Starlight Foundation beautifully sent us on a holiday, which is unusual because normally a lot of those organisations don't do it for babies because they think, well, the baby can't really. But I can tell you they do get something out of it, because it was cold in Sydney and I wanted her to feel warm air. So we went to the warmest place we could think of. We went to Broome. It was a place that neither of us had gone to, so we wanted there to be absolutely no memories from previous trips. It was all just going to be Mackenzie and us as a family, and we went to Broome, and just to take off her clothes and to have like the warm air on her, and you could just see that she loved it. She's like her mum. She's like solar powered. So
then you took her to the snow.
We went the other way. We took her to the snow, and it was just the cutest little thing. We dressed her up in this just like this little delicious, scrumptious little outfit. And I remember Jonny holding her, and she was sticking out her tongue, and it started snowing, and so she was catching little snowflakes on her tongue, and it was just... And we walked in dinosaur footprints up in Broome with her. She went on a helicopter. We put her on a helicopter flight. At first she was looking at me going, what are you doing to me? But then she fell asleep. We took her on a hovercraft. Just any experience we could give her, like sand, rainforests. We went to Cape Tribulation.
Did you feel happy?
Yeah. Sometimes you'd forget. That family life, when the three of us were together, I just... I was really happy.
Were you packing those memories away? Like even as you were living them, were you also experiencing them as memories from after she'd gone, or could you be in the moment sometimes with her?
Could definitely be in the moment, but I was also very conscious of taking photos and videos, and I had a diary. So I had this deal that I would do. I think it was just a deal with myself actually, that she would do one thing different every day. And whether it was to hang out with one of my friends or to go on a hovercraft or to visit a new cafe, whatever it was documented in a diary with a photograph, and I would write it. And that was really hard to be doing that while she was still in my arms, but I knew that I had to. I haven't opened it since. I don't think I'm there yet. Yeah. But yeah, sorry. Just definitely able to be in the moment, and
What are you thinking about now?
I'm thinking about the different phases of grief, because I've been very distant from her in my mind the last 2 months. I think it's a coping mechanism, but then I feel guilty. So thinking about her book and having not read it, it just brings up
like
mother's
a bad
guilt.
mum.
Yeah, mother's guilt does not end.
It's not fair that you have that even when you don't have have her in your arms. You've still got the guilt.
Oh yeah,
as well as the grief.
I have guilt that I'm not doing things right, that I'm not thinking about her enough, that I'm thinking about her too much, that I'm living too much in my pain, that I'm not moving forward. Then we had, I feel bad if I'm not, when I have a good night routine with her, and if I am saying it just to her and I'm not saying it to the other babies that we've lost, then I feel guilt to them, and it's just...
Rach, you're doing a terrible job.
I know.
Honestly. I'm really disappointed in the way
I just pull myself together, honestly.
Try harder.
Yeah.
Okay? At grieving. You knew how this was going to end.
Yeah.
But when she got sick at 7 months, did you know that was going to be the end?
No. So what we would do is, as well as doing our travels, we would also do month days. So that's what we would...
Instead of birthdays.
Because we were pretty sure she was never going to have her first birthday. We didn't think she was going to get there, and she didn't. So it's so funny seeing other people be parents, because I think back on the month days and like we gave her custard and chocolate and like dipped her dummy in all sorts of things. Anything that would give her a sensation or a flavour or an experience, we were like, oh my gosh, yes, have it. And so I think about sort of some people and with their parenting, they're like, oh no, don't do that, don't do that. I'm like, oh, she can have what she wants. She can sleep on me whenever she wants. She can do what she wants if it makes her smile.
So she got a cold.
Yeah, so we did a 7-month day down in Tassie. We spent it yachting with her, as you do. Then we flew back from Tassie and we were actually packing up our house. So we had always lived in like eastern suburbs, and then we had moved down south because we wanted to give her some space and a house. This is before she was diagnosed. And then we decided we needed to move close to Sydney Children's Hospital for her. So we were packing up our house to move. She had an unsettled night, didn't sleep very well, and a bit of crying, but there was nothing too alarming for us. And then Jonny and I were really good in that we'd take it in turns overnight and had quite a teamwork if she couldn't sleep. And we had called our palliative care team to say that she was a bit unsettled, and they said that just sort of watch her and they'd send someone around. And Jonny had gone to sleep and my mum was helping me. She was packing up the kitchen and she just started changing colour in my arms. I yelled out for my mum and I said, am I saying things? And she said no. And we got her breathing again. I screamed for Jonny. I called the ambulance. I don't even remember that phone call. And yeah, Mum and I got her breathing again. Mum was sort of hitting her on the back,
just trying to startle her into
and
breathing.
Move whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I went to do some breaths of air, some mouth to mouth. She sort of started breathing again, and then the ambulance turned up. And my poor mum, she stayed at the house, and Jonny followed in the car behind, and I got in the ambulance, and they strapped me to the bed with her on me, and I just kept singing in her ear. And I just remember the look on the paramedic's face. I saw fear.
Did you know what this was?
No, I didn't know what was happening. So we went lights and sirens to Sydney Children's Hospital. Things were very real when we got there. There was like 20 people waiting for us, and the look on her face was... I know now that she thought that moment was the end.
But it wasn't.
Mackenzie was fighting. Just watching her get face masks and hooked up to things, and we couldn't see her face anymore, and it was just... We went up to the ICU, and then the next 4 days was her trying to stay with us. And I think probably about 12 or so hours after she closed her eyes for the last time. She was still with us, but Jonny remembers thinking that was the last time he was going to see her eyes. I just remember before she closed her eyes, she was just looking at me, and I know that she wanted me to fix things, and I couldn't. She would get better, and then she would get worse. And then I remember one time she crashed and it was just, my mum was panicking, and I told her that she had to go outside because I had to focus on Kenzie. And I remember they were all working on her, and they brought out, the bag where they're doing oxygen, and all I could focus on for a second was the fact that the nurse who was doing the bag oxygen on her was just chewing gum nonchalantly, and it was just the most weirdest thing for me to focus on. But everything had been so surreal, and now I'm watching my baby probably die. They stabilised her though, and I just remember sliding down the wall, and I was just this ball on the floor. So there were moments where we thought she was coming home. And so what had happened was she had actually just got the common cold, and her lungs couldn't fight and clear the mucus, so one of her lungs had collapsed. And in hospital, it was all about getting her lung to work again. And finally the lung was looking better, but during the process they had to put a nasal feeding tube. And either that or some of the medication to reduce her fever had caused her to have internal bleeding in her stomach. So we tried to wait for it to clot. I just remember changing her nappies, and it was just all blood.
Were you being asked to make decisions, you and Johnny?
Yeah.
And how do you make a decision at the worst moment of your life?
I think Johnny and I are really lucky in that we had the same thoughts and the same, I guess, life values, and the way that we looked at things, I guess maybe our upbringing or maybe policing, I don't know. They offered things like intubation, but we had already said no, that we would never intubate.
So breathing tubes.
Yeah.
Life support.
Yeah, we would never do that. We were very grateful in that we were told that the decision was ours, and we were never swayed either way. But after we made our decisions, the head people in the area, in the ICU, were telling us that that's the decision that they would make for their child. So that kind of gave us, they didn't say that until we had made our decision, because
they didn't want to sway you.
No.
Did you get to hold her in the end?
We were told that we had to have we would have one more test. We agreed we would have one more test to check whether her hemoglobin had stabilised, to check whether the clotting had happened and whether there was a chance. They moved us from where we were, and they took us to a double room and put some beds together. And they brought us a pack of suggestions of things that we could do, books that we could read to her, nail polish if we wanted to polish, scissors if we wanted to cut pieces of her hair off. So we played her the Wiggles, her favourite. We couldn't hold her, unfortunately. That was really hard. I hated cutting her hair off, but I wanted it, so.
The fact that such a kit exists is just so shocking and heartbreaking in itself.
There's so many things that shouldn't exist that we
the protocol for a situation like that exists.
So we went to paint her nails, but then we decided that she was perfect exactly how she was, so we painted one of our nails each. All of our family did. So we have a Mackenzie toe. So if you ever see me wandering around with
unpainted nail,
my whole family did it, and we had our families come in and say goodbye, which was just, we read a book called The Invisible String to her, so she knew that no matter where she was always connected to us. And then we just fell asleep with her in between us, and I remember during the night they came in and they woke us up and they told us that the test showed that her hemoglobin was not stable. and they asked us when we wanted to take her oxygen mask off. We asked for a few more hours, so we just slept. And
was she peaceful?
Yeah, she was asleep. I really struggle with, actually. I wish I knew for sure how she was feeling. She wasn't awake, and they were giving her morphine. But there's that mother's part in me that's like, what if? What if? And then I remember Jonny and I looking at each other, and we were like, we were supposed to go and tell them when it was time. When is it time?
How about in 45 years?
How about never?
60 years?
I just remember going out and saying, it's time to take her mask off now.
You knew?
Yeah.
You felt something change? You knew?
It was time. You had to let her go. But it was also really hard because they told us that she could breathe without the mask for 2 days, so we could be sitting there watching her die for 2 days.
All right. I'm so sorry that you and Jonny had to go through this, that anyone has to go through this.
I feel sad for myself, but I feel worse for her because she didn't even get a chance. So we took the mask off, and in a lot of ways we were lucky because it was just 2 little breaths. And she was gone. I remember the doctor looking for a heartbeat, and I still remember his words always in my head every day. I'm sorry, she's gone. Yep.
Having almost, 5 months to prepare, I guess, didn't ease the shock of it in the end, did it?
No. We have all these photos. We took photos of, the doctors took them as they were taking the mask off. And afterwards I bathed her and dressed her, and I've got all these photos, but to look at them is just... But you want those photos because they're part of her life.
You'll look at them at some stage, but you beat yourself up a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
It's a mum thing.
Oh,
I think.
I just couldn't protect her.
Mm.
This is something that we couldn't help, but at the same time, it's something that we gave her.
You and Jonny are a very tight couple. Losing a child can take you in one of 2 directions. It can either split you apart or bring you closer together.
Yeah.
You guys found out that you were both carriers of this gene.
Yep.
With no family history on either side, not even knowing that there was a test that you could have had.
Yep.
I'd never heard of it until I read your story. I'd never heard of this SMA, which is the number 1 genetic or congenital killer of babies under 2.
Yep.
You and Jonny have campaigned tirelessly around SMA, and you want there to be mandatory genetic testing.
Well, not mandatory.
Or you at least want people to be told about it. I'd never heard of it. Yeah. I've had 3 kids.
Yeah, so we initially started getting really angry about the SMA side of things. But then, as sort of Jonny puts it, we realised that SMA is actually just a symptom of something larger. So we weren't really campaigning about, initially it was about awareness around SMA and why is it that we don't know about it? Why is it not on the heel prick test so you know straight away?
Babies, when they're born, for people who haven't had one, they're tested, they get a little heel prick test. They're tested for so many different things. So before they leave hospital, their hearing is tested before they leave hospital.
And with some of these new treatments that are coming out, like Spinraza and some of the other ones that are coming out,
the earlier the better.
Yeah, the earlier the better. Because obviously with motor neuron disease, once you lose a physical ability, the horse is bolted, you're not getting it back. So the earlier you get the test to know. So we were looking at, okay, well, why do GPs not know about SMA? Because most don't. Why do people not know about the testing? But then we suddenly realised, wait a minute, we were told, okay, now that we know that you've got SMA, we need you to have, well, we know that Kenzie's got SMA, so now we need to have a test for you guys to check that it did come from you guys, because sometimes there can be mutations. So we went and got this genetic test, and it was just this simple blood test, and you can also have a saliva swab test. And we went, well, wait a minute, so these tests already exist.
Mm-hmm.
We spent, as you possibly would know through communications with me, I'm type A. I'm really we did so much preparation for Kenzie, and to have done all the tests, including when we were pregnant with her, we did the NIPT test, which is the non-invasive pregnancy test, which people call the Harmony test. So we did all that to check her chromosomes, all those sorts of things. But that there's this quick and easy test that you can have before you are even when you're planning to get pregnant or in your first trimester of pregnancy to find out. So as we were discovering all of this new information, we actually came across a stat that just absolutely floored me. And that is that every single one of us carries on average 3 genetic disorders. So everyone who's listening to this, you carry genetic disorders in your DNA that you could pass on to your children. But it depends on who you get together with. So with SMA, it's a recessive genetic disorder, meaning that you have 2 people who both carry it. So neither Jonny and I have symptoms of it. We won't be affected by it, but we carry it in our DNA. And when we get together, there's a 1 in 4 chance that we'll have a child with SMA. There's a 2 in 4 chance that the child will also be a carrier, and there's a 1 in 4 chance that they will be completely fine. So when we found out, we're like, okay, well, how many genetic disorders are there out there? There's thousands. There's thousands. So we're suddenly open to this world where it's like, okay, so we've all got stuff in our DNA that we can pass on to our children. There's a test that you can have to find out what it is that you carry and whether there is a chance of you passing this on to your child. And we don't do it. And we're not even offered it, and we're not aware of it, but the test already exists. So we started asking questions to go, well, why isn't it offered? How much is it? It's ranges from 300 to 1,000. So, okay, well, a lot of people have that money. A lot of people don't have that money. How can we make it so it's got equitable access and everyone can have it? And with all these questions, we were getting angry. Why is this not done? We started working with some medical professionals who are incredible and so smart. And they've been working on this for years. And then we started speaking to universities who had been doing cost analysis to find out, well, what's the costs of these genetic disorders to Australia? And then we found out it'll be cheaper and better for Australia, not just financially, emotionally, mental health. Everything about it would be better for Australia if we're offering this test to people. I wrote a letter. And as a family, we went, well, what can we do? And I went, I want to write a letter to the Health Minister and to the Prime Minister. And my parents sat down and said, well, let's not stop there. Let's send it to every member of Parliament. Okay. So we sent a letter and a picture of Kenzie to every single member of Parliament, or 275 it was, that my parents hand-addressed and delivered to Parliament House. And slowly we started having responses to people, and they varied from we're really sorry to hear about it to we truly believe in this and we're going to write to the Health Minister on your behalf. We had Tanya Plibersek actually called us. We just had such a range. We had some
She's
people.
a good woman.
We had some people who ignored us and sent the photo back, which was brutal. That was really hard, but we had to think of the long game to not react. And then we met with Brad Hazzard, so New South Wales Health Minister, and he was wonderful, and he wrote to every single GP in New South Wales telling them to start looking into genetic testing. And then we met with Greg Hunt, who's the Federal Health Minister, and he's incredible. I know most people don't say that about politicians, but that man, he cried when he met us, and he said, I promise that I will do something for Mackenzie, for her legacy. And that was just, we all cried. The whole room was crying. And then last May, we got asked if we can go down to Canberra for the budget. We met with Greg Hunt, and he told us behind closed doors, away from all the cameras, he said, tonight they're going to announce a genomics project, and there's going to be a pilot program that's going to be $20 million. And that pilot program is going to start developing a test that can be offered to couples, and checking out, sort of going through the pilot program process of how is it going to work in Australia, and what's the ethics behind it, and what genes are we going to test for, and etc. And he teared up again, and then we stopped that meeting. But we went outside and we were interviewed by Sophie Scott for ABC, and that's when she told us it was going to be called Mackenzie's Mission.
Wow.
Oh, hysterical tears.
Look what she did.
Her legacy.
Look what her mum and dad did.
And then hopefully the end goal is that the test will be offered to all Australians who want it, based on their views and what they deem correct for their family. But it's about giving them the information.
Sure.
And letting them make the decision for themselves.
Sure, like we do on a lot of genetic testing currently during pregnancy around Down syndrome.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to do it, but
some people choose not to.
Yeah, and we hope that eventually it'll be standard practice and it'll be an opt-out thing. But that's our belief. I don't ever want to put the word mandatory on it, just because I want people to be able to. People get scared of the word genetics, and they think we've had the smartest of people say the dumbest of stuff to us when it comes to it, saying, oh, you're looking at eugenics, you're looking at creating a master race of blue-eyed, blonde-haired, blah, 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 and you just
that's not what Mackenzie's mission is.
So the genes that are going to be tested for are life-threatening and severe genetic conditions, and it's not just about this necessarily stopping pregnancies of children that might have these genetic disorders. It's about providing people with the information. And we've had the range of ridiculously horrible things said to us, like, oh, but I would love my child no matter what. And then that's like, I can't believe you would say that to me. I love Mackenzie more than anything in this world. I would have given up my life if it meant we could have swapped. But sometimes being a parent is making those hard decisions, and sometimes it's loving someone so much that you're not going to put them through that.
You had to make that decision not long after you lost Mackenzie with Bella.
Yeah.
You and Johnny, as carriers, you needed to have IVF. Tell me about Bella.
Yeah. So there's a couple of options that you've got if you're a carrier, and it's not something that's treatable, and you don't think that it's something that's compatible with life. For us, we had seen that SMA is not for us, and we didn't want to put another child through what Kenzie had gone through. We would live our time over and over and over and over again with Kenzie, but we would never make her go through it again, and so we wouldn't make another child go through it. So we went through IVF. So what can happen is you create embryos, and then the incredible science these days is that what happens is most times with IVF you create embryos and they try to make them grow to day 5 and then they freeze them. So for us they try to make them grow to day 6. So on day 6 an embryo hatches, and that's when it would hatch and it would implant. But when it hatches, it would allow the incredibly smart embryologists to actually test the embryos and see whether they have SMA. So getting embryos to day 6 is harder than to day 5. So we have gone through, we went through 5 rounds of IVF and we got 1 healthy embryo, which was really quite surprising and shocking to us because we have no fertility issues. So we thought, okay, well, we'll do one round of IVF. We're so stupid in some ways. Like, we actually sat and had a conversation about what would we do if we had excess embryos, and we decided that we'd donate them to people. And then in hindsight, that's such a...
That would be a great problem to have.
Yeah, we really wanted to give that gift.
So that's a
someone,
fortune you spent in IVF.
We were
and you had one embryo.
We were very lucky in that we actually got asked to go on the Kyle and Jackie O show, and we thought that it was to raise awareness about Mackenzie. This was before Mackenzie's mission. So we went in there absolutely nervous.
This is Carl Sandilands and Jackie O. They've got a breakfast radio show in Sydney.
Yeah, so we went in thinking, oh, great, this is going to be a platform for us to talk about Kenzie and to try to tell people, having babies is not as simple as you think it is.
And they surprised you with...
And they surprised us with
IVF.
So we have managed to get from them $30,000 worth of IVF and testing so that this doesn't happen again and you can fall pregnant.
Thank you so much.
I don't know a more deserving couple.
Oh, we just beside ourselves. But again, we thought, we're not going to need this whole 30,000. What do we? Can we cash in the rest? No, just
yeah.
joking. But we've spent that and more. We've spent thousands of our own money, thousands of donated money.
You do get pregnant though.
I do get pregnant. I do. Yeah, I'm relatively fertile. So that's the frustrating thing, is that we don't need this. So we got only one healthy embryo. We've got one extra embryo, but it wasn't able to be tested, but it was able to be frozen. So that we kind of see as a package deal. A lot of people ask why we haven't transferred that embryo already, but I'm 35. We had the idea that we'd have another 2 children. We weren't quite ready to give up on that just yet, and we thought, well, while I've got eggs and while I'm fertile, let's try to have a baby.
Use the fresh ones.
And then we'll transfer that one later on. And I've only recently sort of come to terms with the fact that we might only have one more, and that's if we're lucky. I haven't even come to terms with even the possibility of not having any. So we did those 5 rounds, failed. We took a break and we got pregnant within the first 2 months, naturally. Had another miscarriage or chemical pregnancy. We had a miscarriage before Mackenzie as well.
Your file's getting pretty thick by now. At the gynecologist obstetrician.
I like to think that I'm not religious at all, but I do believe that there's something, and I like to think that all of my babies are waiting for me wherever we go. So I'm just going to have this soccer team
hanging out. Yeah,
these beautiful babies, just
Spice Girls.
Yeah, absolutely. I prefer Spice Girls than soccer. I'm not a soccer fan. So yeah, we had another chemical pregnancy or a miscarriage, and then we got pregnant. And what you have to do if you get pregnant naturally is, or you don't have to, but our choice is you wait until 12 weeks and you can have a CVS, which is like an amniocentesis, but you can have it a little bit earlier. So it's a needle through the stomach, and instead of taking with an amniocentesis, they take amniotic fluid, but with the CVS they actually take a part of the placenta. So it is a little bit riskier, which is why sometimes they wait, but at the same time if you wait then there's all sorts of other. So we had the test, and we saw the beautiful baby on the screen, and we were told that we were going to have to wait a couple of weeks for the test results, which is just torture. But the process of IVF and watching your embryos diminish day after day is,
a different kind of torture.
What's more torturous. We got called in on a Friday afternoon to say the results were in. Went into Royal Hospital for Women, sat down, the doctor came in. Jonny knew straight away, but I still had some hope, and they said that the baby had SMA again, another little girl who we called Bella. We had already made the decision before we got pregnant that we would, I don't like the word terminate, that we would medically interrupt the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. Where are you at now?
Well, we did a 6th round of IVF, and the day before the egg collection, I was having an ultrasound and they found a deep vein thrombosis in my pelvis because
of course they did.
Of course. Why else? Yeah. Like, what else needs to be thrown at us, right? We keep waiting, thinking, oh, it's going to change, it's going to change, it's going to change.
Someone's messing with you.
Oh, it's so messed up.
So then you went on a holiday.
Yeah, so that round got cancelled. And now I have to do 2 injections a day of blood thinners to my stomach is delightful bruised colour. So then we went on a holiday, and now we're just sort of figuring out our next move. Do we just transfer that embryo? Do we keep trying naturally? Do we try naturally and for 3 months and then transfer that embryo? Do we not do another round of IVF? And every single way that I turn, I think the other reason why I've avoided that embryo is because if there's only a 50% chance that it's going to implant, and if that doesn't implant, that's, $50,000 and a year and a half and all of my heart.
I was going to ask you, what's the most helpful and unhelpful thing people can say when you're grieving the loss of a child?
The most unhelpful thing is silence. One of my bestest friends in the world left me. She walked away.
What's wrong with people?
I don't know.
Did she say why?
No.
Did she leave a note?
No, I wrote her a note.
I hope you did.
But no, I'm sure that there's something that she tells herself that and tells others that makes it. But all I know is I needed her and she was gone.
People show you who they are, I guess.
They do. And people show you where their limits are. And in some ways people would say, be understanding and that. But I'm like, well, why do I have to be understanding about how people, I remember I've done so much thinking about this, but we've actually had people literally see us in the street that know us and walk the other way. We've had people back away from us. We've had people, and it's like, this is 2 minutes of uncomfortable feelings for you versus a lifetime of pain for me. So how about you get over yourself and you just be a decent human and you come over and you speak to me. But I found this world on Instagram, my Insta family, and they are just, I started off just using it.
Your account is called My Life of Love, I should say.
Yes, My Life of, and then _love.
Why did you call it that?
Because I feel like I'm luckier than I am unlucky, despite everything.
You've said a lot of times during this conversation, we're really lucky, we've been really lucky, I was really lucky.
Yeah.
And I thought that's such an interesting word to use repeatedly.
I'm determined that Mackenzie is, apart from Jonny and my beautiful family and his beautiful family, well, that's one of the many reasons why we're lucky. We're in love. He's the most, my friends call him the unicorn partner because he's just so magically amazing, and there's only one of him and I got him. Sorry, ladies. But
Jonny, have you got a brother? No brothers.
But
asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Literally asking for a friend.
He's amazing. I have a beautiful, beautiful family. He has a beautiful family. I have wonderful friends. I have a job that I love. I've got this Instagram community that I started writing to when I had 100 people, and now people contact me every day, and they're either going through IVF or they've had medical interruption as well, or they're just mums who have had a really bad night with their child, and my story makes them realise that they should, that you can feel what you need to feel, but then you put it into perspective. And the reason why we say that I'm lucky is because I would never wish this life on my worst enemy, but the perspective I wish for everyone. It's really hard to understand, but I am better. My life is better from having had her.
And Mackenzie was pretty damn lucky to have you and Jonny as her parents. She chose well. Thanks, Rach.
Thank you.
August is Spinal Muscular Atrophy Month, SMA month, which is why we really wanted to share this story with you today. We need to educate new parents about this fatal disease. You can find out more and donate to help to find a cure for SMA by going to smaaustralia.org.au. And if you want to read more from Rachael, she's quite a beautiful writer. You can read her blog by searching My Life of Love in Google, or you can follow her on Instagram by also searching My Life of Love, and you can see lots of pictures of the beautiful Mackenzie there. Please share this episode with someone who you think might benefit from it, perhaps someone who's pregnant, someone who's planning a family, or someone who has a newborn. Recognising those signs as early as possible can make such a difference, and we want to help get the word out there. Thank you for listening to this very special episode of No Filter. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on mamamia.com.au.